The Florida Panthers are playing hockey in June for a chance to clinch their spot in the Stanley Cup Final. And for that, we should all definitely be grateful.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Saturday, June 1st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow show account on X and Instagram at L_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. So the Florida Panthers return home to Amerant Bank Arena after winning Game 5 in regulation, and this is the chance for them to clinch their spot in the Stanley Cup Final and for a chance, hopefully, for a second handshake line at home through these Stanley Cup playoffs. But we do have a guest here on today's show to help us preview tonight's Game 6 between the Florida Panthers and the New York Rangers. He is making his Locked On Florida Panthers podcast debut. If you are into hearing multiple podcasts in relation to the Florida Panthers, you probably have heard this voice before, along with Twitter Spaces. He is one of the three co-hosts of the Cats and Rats podcast, Cody Stevens. Cody, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
Just excited for tonight's game, man. I can't wait.
I'm excited too, and hopefully we are talking about a dub and for the Florida Panthers to get hopefully a second consecutive trip to the Stanley Cup Final. Yeah. But I do want to give you the floor for a few minutes to just give you an opportunity to summarize how you're feeling about the Florida Panthers getting to this point where they are up 3-2 against the New York Rangers with a chance to clinch at home. The floor is yours, my friend.
I mean, you can't be anything short of confident right now. I mean, especially if you're a Panthers fan or even a part of the team. It's just this series, you can argue this series would be over if Igor Shesterkin was just a normal goaltender.
Mm-hmm.
But he's one of the top 3 in the world, in my opinion. Probably even the best as of right now, but just the way they have been playing throughout this series, the constant pressure, they have stayed consistent the entire series, minus some mishaps in Game 3, but they outplayed New York in that one as well. And last game, I should say, was just a perfect example of them taking a punch and then delivering the quote-unquote knockout blow in Game 5. Because I can make a ton of arguments. The Rangers were the better team through 2 periods in Game 5. They had more ozone time. They were better with the puck. I thought they were better in the offensive zone, maybe causing a little bit more confusion with the defense that the Panthers run. As everyone knows, it's man-to-man. And I thought they were trying different things in the zone to try and create some chances that they haven't had all series. But Florida did an amazing job and just staying structured, and their penalty kill, who has been phenomenal all postseason, just continues the momentum. And then the playoffs are not really about your star stepping up. That's a major part of it, but when your depth steps up, it makes you feel any better. Gustav Forsling has taken another step these playoffs that we have seen, and he's been the best defenseman in this series, especially, and that is high praise, especially when Adam Fox is on the other side. He may be a little injured, but for the sake of this, but for Forsling to be in that company where he's considered a top 3 defenseman in the NHL is nothing short of outstanding. And then a guy who's had his breakout in these playoffs, Anton Lundell, I can't say anything more great about how he's done. And I just have a lot of confidence going into Game 6. It's just the Panthers have been just phenomenal this series. Sergei Bobrovsky had a shaky Game 3, but bounced back with 2 phenomenal performances. And another thing is, this is the first elimination game for the Rangers this postseason. They've been up in every series. They have not been threatened of elimination in a game. So this is a different type of feel for a game like this, where it's not like in years past you would feel like, oh, like the 3-1 lead in Tampa. Like, remember, if Tampa wins Game 5, the pressure's on Florida in Game 6 per se, right?
Yeah.
But now it feels a lot more the pressure's on New York. It felt like that last night because if you watched that game, the entire MSG crowd was just, they had Let's Go Rangers chants, but it was just anxiety-filled chants, not much heart into them. And when Lundell scored, that I just felt like it was like a toothpick to a balloon. You just popped and the air got sucked out of the building. And it's just, with that, I could just feel like the mountain of pressure on the Rangers right now. Like, there's pressure on Florida to close it out, no doubt. It's just, it's different now. And the Panthers have been great this series, and I have confidence they'll close this out. Like I said, I think the first 10 minutes are going to be crucial because, once again, you're playing a very desperate hockey team. You saw it with the Bruins last round, which, like, Game 5 was probably their, like, where we tried to close it out in Game 5, couldn't quite do it. And then remember Tampa round 1, that was their best game of series. Game 4, when they were on the verge of elimination. Like, the hardest game is to close that game, but going into this one, it's a different feel to it. And I just feel like they're closing this out tonight.
And you think about the different storylines for coming into this when it's a Game 6 on the road in Boston versus a Game 6 at home in Florida too. Even though the Florida Panthers are more than capable of going into a Game 7 and going into Madison Square Garden, if that is the case for them. But just all throughout the playoff run, the Panthers have only lost 2 straight once this entire postseason, which was Games 2 and 3 against the Rangers, which you even said that if Igor Shesterkin wasn't Igor Shesterkin, who knows where maybe the series is over for the Panthers too. And you think all across the playoff run, different guys stepping out, Gustav Forsling, Anton Lundell, Sam Bennett recently. I mean, Sam Bennett was creating enemies in Boston in the prior round, entering into the series. I mean, also Anton Lundell stepping into the second line for a little while for him. And then the line changes going into that elimination game in Game 5 for the Panthers. Etu was also taking the place in multiple series in that third line too, and also Stenlund going up into that third line in Game 3 against Tampa and Game 2 against Boston a little bit too. So that's another thing. Even though Stenlund is not getting the points there, but he's taking crucial draws on the penalty kill for the Panthers too. And also Sergei Bobrovsky, you mentioned that he's not getting a whole bunch of shots on against, but still for the Panthers, this is something that Alex Baumgartner of 5 Reasons Sports, he's put all the game logs too of just all the goal against, and this is recently 2, 5, 2, 0, 1, 2, 2. I mean, like that's a big streak of just like of just the Panthers sticking to their game. And it's just, even with the eye test, we're not seeing acrobatics for Sergei Bobrovsky that he needs to just create that. I mean, we saw that in Game 2 against Tampa with that incredible save on Dumba, but still you see that there's still a calmness to this team whenever they are playing their game, and every single round you've seen the Panthers lock in on somebody, not necessarily lock in, maybe that's the wrong use of words, but eliminate a star player. I mean, Kucherov, Pasternak, Panarin in this one, and even Paul Maurice even spoke that they don't necessarily eye in on someone, but they still continue to just roll their game. And hey, every single round for the Panthers has had, you're okay with certain guys beating you. Steven Stamkos, Jake DeBrusk, and now Alexei Lafreniere, but it's not up and down the lineup for the opposition.
Yeah, it's like you said, like we've played against some of the best wingers in the NHL. Probably, if you would ask people, probably a lot of these guys would be in their top 5. Round 1, Nikita Kucherov. Round 2, David Pastrnak. Now, round 3, you're going against Artemi Panarin, who's coming off his best year. He was 49 goals this year, I believe.
Yeah, 49.
And another storyline is the Panthers have had the toughest road of goaltending out of anyone in these playoffs. I mean, round 1, Andrei Vasilevsky, like, the track record speaks for themselves. And then Jeremy Swayman, who at the time was considered the hottest goalie in the playoffs. And he stole Boston like a couple games in that series. And now you're going against Igor Shesterkin, who everyone considers, once again, the best goalie left in these playoffs. So it's just been a great job of just like not really worrying about, like, you worry about the opposition, but you're not afraid of them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference to it. Like, you're not looking at it like, oh, we got Igor Shesterkin, oh, we're gonna get shut out tonight. But no, they keep grinding. Like, he's made phenomenal save after phenomenal save. He's had some posts though. He's had some posts. Sam Bennett should have had 2 goals. Like, he got beat that one. But once again, it's a part of the game, and once again, it's just this team has just been great about eliminating the pressure inside the room because they never play with it. Like you said, like every single like national broadcast has said the same thing. Like even the guy between the best is like the Ray Ferraro to the Darren Pang. When the Panthers are down, they never sense any panic. It's pure just calmness. There's no different look on the team. They all go out and play the same shift. Like it's the same looks on the face, and that's just something that I believe has made them this great team and why this run has been phenomenal to start. And like I said, let's hope they finish this one tonight.
Yeah, and we're going to continue discussing more about the lack of panic for the Panthers, even when they are down. And it starts with the head coach, Paul Maurice. We're going to discuss all of that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time makes getting NBA and Stanley Cup Final tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off or puck drop. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and a view from your seat and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA and NHL tickets. Priority last-minute deals save up to 60% off buying tickets for sports, concert, comedy, theater, and more. And with flash deals, you could save even more on exclusive in-app deals to select seats ahead of the game or event. All-in pricing, toggle this feature to show your total upfront with no surprises and fees at checkout. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will give you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Back on this Saturday, June 1st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Saturday with one of the 3 co-hosts of the Cats and Rats podcast. Cody Stevens is here making his Locked On Panthers debut. And Cody, I want to discuss more about something that Paul Maurice spoke about today in the off day for the Panthers, as they are likely already back. We are recording this at 9:23 p.m. In the first intermission of the Western Conference Final, so chances are they're back. But for the Cats, and them, Paul Maurice spoke about how it really all started with the with training camp video this offseason. He was asked, I believe it was by Michael Russo. I believe the voice was him based on the listening to the video share. But he spoke about how asked him how long it takes to get over a loss in the Stanley Cup Final, especially being with his experience, and talk about the moment I show them video, I get excited again. And then really it takes like August to get over it because you're just going back to the grind and just getting back to work for them. And also for Maurice, just the this part of the year, once again, discussing about having fun in the journey to get to this point for the Panthers. And also the fact that more in this time of year, you are more hands off because the players are the guys who are blocking shots, making the stretch passes, getting on the forecheck. It's him now leading the horse to water in the case for the Panthers. So when you hear Paul Maurice say that, and just how the structure of everything went, even with the start of the season, even going back to September, I mean, it's got to be great to see how it's all manifested here.
It's been as a lifelong fan who's been through a lot of downs and now finally seeing the ups. It's a really change of fresh air, really. But like, I still don't think a lot of the guys on the team have gotten over the Stanley Cup Final loss last year.
Yeah,
Specifically, like one guy I think is really, if they do make it back, I expect the best hockey I've seen him play, Matthew Tkachuk, because you have to think about it from his perspective. He was knocked out, had to watch his team, because remember, Game 5 was a funeral last year. Let's be honest here. It was a funeral. The lineup was
Dedesenko, Stahl up a line,
Dalpy, like Ryan Lomberg is barely scraping in the lineup now. He was on the third line for Game 5 of the Cup Final last year, which just shows you how depleted the Panthers were and how injured and how stuff like that, and why this run's a lot different. They're not as banged up. I hope not, because they don't like to detail the injuries till after. It's just like when you see when you get that close to a championship and you taste it, it becomes almost an obsession for a guy, because it was just a great experience for guys like Barkov, Tkachuk, Ekblad, and even Bobrovsky, even because Bobrovsky's never made it that far either.
Mm-hmm.
The only guy that I think on last year's team that won a cup was Verhaeghe, if I'm not mistaken. And Eric Stahl, my bad, forgot about him. But it's like looking for like a team that had won the President's Trophy the year before, made like the crazy deal, and then comes back the next year, makes the Cup Final, and now you're a game away from making the Cup Final again. It's just and as you said earlier, why my confidence so high? This is another reason, because they knew from training camp what the goal was. They knew exactly what the standard is, because it's no more just get a playoff series when they're past that now. And like I said, Paul Maurice, he's had experience with teams losing the cup, because Panthers and then Carolina way back when was Carolina, because this is his second time, and it's just he understands now, I think, better like how to handle the pain of losing for guys. And from what I've seen of Florida this year, I think they're such a competitive bunch, and most of the guys that were on that team last year are back again this year, which makes the hunger a lot deeper. Which is why you're seeing guys come from like the press box and just immediately make an impact. Because Ryan Lomberg in Game 2 had his best game as a Panther jersey, in my opinion. And I think that is a perfect prime example of the hunger that this team has starting from training camp. Because here's the thing, they had to dig deep early, because remember, they didn't have Ekblad, they didn't have Montour to start the year. They didn't get until mid-November. Bennett was also out to start the year. So a lot of guys had to pick up the slack, and when the depth guys are showing that hunger, it's a recipe for success, in my opinion, because OEL had a great start of the year in Montour's absence. Mahura and Balinskis did a great job on the bottom pair, just sewing things up at the beginning. And it just shows like Paul Maurice has kind of set the culture now, because you see guys blocking shot. I mean, Tarasenko, that block shot in Game 5, was huge. And coming from a guy who's been the guy who's won a cup, 40-goal scorer, just laying on and blocking a shot like that shows you what he means by that. Because it isn't like, they're doing this, and this, and on the ice they're showing something different. It's the same thing. They're diving for loose pucks. They're physical every night. It all started from the training camp video. I mean, I guarantee you he showed you the video of, Vegas just skating around the ice with the cup. Holt just lifting it up and just saying that could have been us. We don't want to feel that way again.
It's like remember this feeling.
Yeah.
Remember this feeling of how down you were, and let this motivate you going into this season. Even though he spoke how there's not really momentum going from season to season, I don't know how much I buy that from Paul Maurice.
I can agree to a point. Agree to a point. If you're a young team, I think it matters a lot, because you look at New Jersey last year, Buffalo last year, both were primed to, like, New Jersey was a cup contender, made the playoffs last year, beat the Rangers last year. That Rangers team was better than this one, and they sunk. And then you had Buffalo, who was a point back of the playoffs last year, fell apart again, and just I could see what he says by that, just by those two examples. I think it matters more for a veteran team than it does a young team. I think it truly depends on that. So I can see what he says.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who just recently turned 30, I know that there's difference between the late 20s versus the early, and how your confidence can maybe get you to the point where you could be a little lackadaisical in off-season training, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's another thing when it comes to maybe the difference between a young team and a veteran team, which
Yeah.
now Barkov being here of 11 years for the Panthers. I mean, crazy enough for Barkov, when he take opening night of next year, he will set the record for most seasons in a Florida Panthers sweater. So that's
And
another thing with
he's
how
already got his jersey in the rafters, in my opinion.
I agree.
Like, it's just speaking on Barkov and kind of to show everyone why that training camp venue meant so much. Barkov at the end of last year's Stanley Cup Final said, "I need to be more physical and I need to be more tougher." Barkov had set like more than tripled his career high in hits this year, and it's something like my co-host Kirby Lupel, who you know very well, who's been on here before, has said numerous times on our post game spaces in our Cats and Rats podcast that Barkov can reach those like hit levels, because he's talking about guys like John Tavares who's increased his hit level. Steven Stamkos did it, and it's just, and people are like, "Oh, we don't need Barkov to do that," and it's just, I just found that completely wrong. Like, Barkov was huge, had amazing, like, he led the team in hits one game in these playoffs. I forget which one. He had like 9 or 10 hits or something, and then you have the block shot in Boston right before the forcing goal in Game 6. And like, that is progression from last year, because I don't know if Barkov last year like blocks that shot. Like, so you see like the training camp video and stuff like that. It's just, you're seeing the culmination of it. So and like I said, Paul Maurice has just done an amazing job by setting the culture. It was extremely rough start. Let's be real here. It was extremely rough. But now that he said it, you see everything in motion now. And when you have your big gun, your best player in Barkov doing that, everyone else will just fall in line right after that.
And Barkov 24 penalty minutes to another career high, which it cost them in the Lady Byng being in 12th place. But you know what? We'll take if that means Barkov being more physical and taking over games more with finishing checks, and for that we will definitely take that from, as Paul Maurice says, goon for Barkov.
He is a goon. He is a goon now. But no more Lady Byngs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just Selkies now.
Yeah, it's Selkies and silently just making the other teams pay, not talking about it, just doing it. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3. We're going to discuss more about tonight's game and how the Florida Panthers have a great opportunity going into this game between them and the New York Rangers to finish it off from Amerant Bank Arena. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment number 3 here on this Saturday, June 1st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Saturday. So Florida Panthers versus New York Rangers tonight at 8 p.m. on ABC. Hockey night in Canada too, for those north of the border. But it's funny because crazy to think about the point that the Panthers are, because neither of us picked the Panthers in this series. I picked the Rangers in 6 games. We were talking pre-recording about how you picked them in 7.
In 7. That was my pick.
Yeah,
I'm happy to be wrong, though. I'm more than happy.
Too. But here's and this is, I'm not forecasting anything, but just the way the Panthers are just having the puck on the Rangers zone, and I'm going to make a comparison to another sport. Just based on how the Rangers usually have started games, especially the last 2, it kind of feels like a few years ago. I forget which year it was. It was like Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather, where finally the whole hyped up match that it was, only for it to be disappointment, where Conor McGregor didn't really pace himself, and then Floyd Mayweather was just going in as it was ending. And honestly, every game that we've seen with the Florida Panthers, not every game, at least the majority of the series for the Panthers, we've seen of them even take the game over. Even in Game 3, the game that they lost, where it was a high-scoring game, where some defensive breakdowns for them, but it kind of feels that way for them going into this one. And coming home, yeah, you're going to see a more desperate team. And even you said in segment 1, the first 10 minutes are really going to matter for this. And once again, it's all about. Maurice also discusses and this is more going back to last round of, hey, if losing a game 6 is part of the journey, but you win a game 7 and it gets you to your ultimate goal, let that be part of the journey for what it is. But man, this just I feel like this is the Panthers going into the boxing match and just ready. It's like round 11, round 12 for them, and it's just ready to just get that knockout punch. How are you feeling about this one?
I feel really good. And I'll give you like some couple reasons why. Because one, the Panthers' physical style, because as Paul Maurice was mic'd up last playoffs against the Leafs last series, and he always said, take a piece, take a piece, take a piece. So always like kind of always finish a check, because that wears down a team, especially in a long series. The Panthers have not really been in a long series ever since like the infamous 3-1 comeback versus Boston, because remember, Toronto ended in 5, Carolina ended in 4, Vegas ended in 5, Tampa ended in 5, and Boston, like, it ended in 6, but it didn't feel like a 6.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just, it's different now. Like, the Rangers, I feel, have the first period's been their best period usually, in my opinion. Prior, though, Game 5, I thought the second was their best, but I thought that was more Florida playing kind of like bleh than anything. And it's just, Florida has always been in the third period has been Florida's best period of the playoffs. Like, every single game, the third has been their best. Now we're in the third period of this series. So, and I think the Panthers' best is yet to come. Like I said, I thought games 1 through like 1 and 2 were very good defensively, but offense, you just need a little bit more of a punch. And then games 3, 4, and 5, you kind of see that punch. And now going into game 6, it's like I said earlier, the first 10 minutes are always going to be most important, because the team's going to be faster than you. They're probably going to be more diving into pucks because it's more desperation. And I don't care what team you are, there is a difference between a team that's on the verge of elimination and a team that's not quite there yet. The desperation will always be different. It's just how you manage the first 10 minutes, because I can guarantee you the Rangers are probably going to get a power play to start. And in the first 5-7 minutes, because you're faster than them, you're going to take a tripping penalty, or what, in my opinion, what the Panthers fan is worth, the freaking high sticks. And if we we got to kill that first penalty, and then we're good. Because I think once the Panthers get their first PK, because it usually happens in the first 10 minutes, and I think that's when they start to settle in, and that's when they start getting going. Because if the Rangers are going to want to win this game, I think they're going to have to score more than a goal, at least 2 goals in the first. Mm-hmm. Because if it's 1-0 at the first, it doesn't face the Panthers. Actually, I don't think 2-0 really barely does, but it's just
in game 3, so 4-2.
And those shorties were backbreakers. Mm-hmm. At least that's what they felt at the time. Like the Goodrow one top cheese, that's when you were just like, oh, good Lord, we lost this one. Then they came back. Unfortunately, lost in overtime. But hey, and that's just another thing. It's like both games the Rangers have been in overtime. Game 2, I would say the Rangers played better, because I thought in overtime they were better. But game 3, they survived to get the overtime, and then a gaff at the end there, leaving Wenberg right in front, ends that game. And it's just winning the games in regulation, in my opinion, I think it's a lot more to do with the confidence factor. Because when you get to the third period in this series, it just feels like every time the Rangers are just surviving to get to overtime. They're barely just scraping by. Because the Panthers have been dominant in the third period every single game this series. Like game 1, the Carter Verhaeghe, the Lafreniere own goal. Game 2, they pushed, but they didn't get one, but they pushed. Game 3, the 2-goal comeback. Then game 4, they pushed again, but this time they got the one in overtime, thankfully, because they deserved that game. And then game 5, you saw the Lundell goal, and then it was good night Irene from there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something that I've seen them do this entire postseason run, and I have no reason to not have any more confidence in them. But I do have 2 predictions, though. I'm booking a Barkov goal, because he's been close. And I'm booking, this is going to be a little hot take, because these are my favorite things, but I'm booking Kevin Stenlund to score.
Oh, in even strength or shorthanded?
Either or.
Okay.
At this rate, it might be closer to Shorty because shorthanded because his chances have been better shorthanded. But he's been close. Like you said, Shesterkin had that great save, even though he didn't know where it was on that 5-hole chance. But Barkov game 5 was probably his worst game of the series, but it wasn't like horrible. But he's been around the net, and that first shift to start game in the third period in game 5 really set the tone for the entire period. And I feel like he's gonna get one. And I'm just so confident in this team. It's just what I've seen from them the last year, this postseason run. It's just I'm feeling it right now for them.
Yeah, and getting that first goal to calm the nerves, or even that first PK, because we saw in game 5 for the Rangers how the Panthers were just sticking to their structure, not overcommitting. So it really had the Rangers like really the puck staying on their tape and not zipping in the offensive zone for them too. So that's another thing, is if you could force the Rangers to do that once again, then you're giving yourself a big chance in that first just little fragment of the game that sets the tone the rest of the way. But Cody, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you for coming on and making your debut, and also giving the listeners a sense of your knowledge too. So tell everybody where they can follow you and your work online, my friend.
You could follow me at CMS_305 on Twitter and Instagram. You could find me, Kirby Lupo, and Nick Levine's podcast. We're pushing for twice a week right now because of postseason. You can find that on any major platform. You look wherever you listen to your podcast. Cats and Rats, the Florida Panthers podcast, and we also go live after every post game every night on Twitter, X Spaces. Kirby usually hosts, but me and Nick sometimes host here and there. You can follow Kirby at KJ_loops, LUPS, to find any spaces that we do. We go, like I said, we go live every night, and then we're gonna have, since it's pretty close, we also have the live free agent day spaces. As soon as free agent opens, we're live for about 2 hours trying to figure out who the Panthers may sign, who may walk, and if you are listening and want to hop on spaces, I more than welcome to. Just give your opinion. We're a very tight-knit community, and we go on for a long night, as you probably see some nights.
You see on the bottom like 2 hours and 50 minutes. I'm like, whoa, look at that. So
it gets long. The Kachuk trade was ridiculous. It was like 3-4 hours.
Yep, that one I joined actually. So that was for a little bit.
But we got to catch you on the free agent one though.
Yes, definitely got to book me for that one too. But Nick, and also before we sign off here, congratulations to the Florida Everblades for making it to the Kelly Cup Final. They're currently winning 6-1 over Kansas City, and
three-peat, baby. Three-peat. Let's go
for the first time ever in the ECHL. Games 3 through 5 will be June 5th, 7th, and 8th. And if you are attending these games in Estero, make sure to wear green. So, Nick, thank you so much, and I will see you next time, my friend.
Appreciate it.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Cody Stevens, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.